The following is a production of UNO Television for KYNE TV. Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Milo Bale Student Center Ballroom, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome to Consider This. We normally come from a nice cozy fireplace spot down in the Student Center, but today there's been a lot of activity. If you've been watching Channel 26 just moments ago, you saw the conclusion of the second to the last gubernatorial debate between Mike Johanns and Bill Hoffner vying for the top spot in the state. We're going to do a little post-mortem on that, and very proud to have the guests with me tonight that I have Bernie Kalas in the middle of your screen, just sort of a holdover from the actual debate, one of the questioners. To his left, as you see it, is Chuck Sigerson, the chair of the Nebraska Republican Party. On his other side, and we didn't do this to keep them separate, but Ann Boyle, the Nebraska Democratic chair. I thought it was a pretty good debate. I mean, you always hope for, you know, a little fireworks, but pretty much the same as we had before. I'm going to let you go first, Chuck.
Well, in terms that most people can understand, I'd say that Mike Johanns hit about a 500-foot home run tonight. I thought it was excellent. You might have expected that, but nevertheless, I thought he was in full command of the issues, and I thought he answered every question very, very well and gave the viewers a true picture of where he stands on the issues. Okay,
Ann, I'm going to let you go first on this side of Bernie.
Well, if Mike Johanns hit a 500, then Bill Hoffner hit a 600.
Okay, now that we have that out of the way,
However, I would like to say this. I thought it was interesting that Mike Johanns is rather evasive when answering questions. When Bill Hoffner commented that, in fact, property taxes have gone up in Lincoln while Mike Johanns has been there, even on his own home for city services, he did not respond to it. He just came back and said they've gone down. There is evidence that shows that not only did his taxes go up, so did many of the other citizens of Lincoln. And so when he doesn't like the allegation, he just avoids answering the question.
Okay, feel free to pipe in now. This is going to be kind of an open deal here. That issue that you brought up, Bill Hoffner has been trying to make that a hallmark issue. He's done a fairly good job of presenting it, and I cannot attest to the 100% accuracy. I've not checked out tax records. However, are the people responding to it, and is Mike avoiding it?
Well, I don't think there's any avoidance whatsoever. The simple fact is that Mike has put out the information showing exactly what has happened with taxes in the Lancaster County and the Lincoln area, and I think that those statistics and those figures speak for themselves. Just because someone accuses you of something doesn't mean it's true, and we can't argue here because we don't have the statistics and the facts between us, but the fact of the matter is the Johanns campaign has put out that information. It truly is a dead issue.
Well, and he never has denied the fact that taxes on his own home have gone up $130 for city services alone. He instead just denies it. And just like, for example, even on his position on the lid, wherein he was he brags that he's traveled 130,000 miles around this state, but it took him until just this July to realize what Bill Hoffner said way last March, that the lid is a bad public policy, and Mike Johanns was caught in his own trap when he said that he delivered a city budget in June, late June, and he went on for two or three more weeks or a week or so and said that he still was for that lid. And then he came forward and said he realized while preparing his city budget that the lid was bad public policy. He is caught in his own lie.
Hang on the lid. We'll get back to the lid. Bernie, you're sitting in the middle, although Chuck would say you're sitting more to the left because of your Democratic leanings. As someone who sits, and I'm sure talks about this in class, and you observe these things in the classroom and among your political friends, and yourself, how are you seeing this issue, this property tax? Did they raise, or were they raised or lowered in Lincoln?
I think first of all, in the responses of both Chuck and Ann, I think that they emphasized very well the themes that the two candidates did stress from their opening statement and through their discussions. I think you've got a fairly clear view, and I think it's been reinforced by the responses so far here, of what each candidate is stressing as his major theme. The Hoppner theme about that Johanns has not been upfront and honest about the tax situation. Johanns countering and saying, yes, I have, and hammering away at that particular point. So I think what you see is a pretty good idea of that issue as one of the major campaign issues that we've heard up to now, and I think we'll continue to hear through the election. The other issue, I think, again, the lid, I think you've clearly heard some differences in relationship to that as an issue that will be different between the two of them. And then you heard a lot of issues in which there was not any difference whatsoever between the two candidates.
Is the thing I see is that Bill is, how do I say this? I guess he's an underdog if you look at the polls. I'm not going to argue polls with you right now, but I mean he's certainly on the on the run to catch up with all the publicity, certainly, and all the paid and free publicity that Mike Johanns had during the primary. I mean, that's the advantage of running in a contested primary. He keeps trying to resonate, and I'm wondering, is he resonating with voters on that issue? And basically, is it an issue that the Democrats will say, yeah, he's right, and the Republicans will say, no, Bill Hoppner's wrong, and our man's right? Do you see it moving any votes, even though it is an important issue, taxation? Do you feel it is?
I don't think it's a question of moving votes on the issue. Those votes are going to change. I think early on, the lid was, a poll was done, and it showed that it had a clear advantage, and that is shifting. What it does demonstrate is Bill Hoppner early on was even advised, don't oppose this because it is being promoted by the most powerful people in the state and the most moneyed people in the state. And it is, as he said in his opening comment, it is about leadership. He stood up and said, I will take the hits for doing the right thing because it is bad public policy, and he had to set the tone for Mike Johanns, who 5 months later came up and said, sure it is, after he was told by the farmers' organizations that finally endorsed him, and by some state senators who went into his office and said, if you don't change your position on the lid, we won't be there for you.
Chuck?
Well, I think what you see here is the different strategies between the candidates. Mike Johanns is running a very positive, personal-oriented campaign. He's telling people what they can expect from him when he is governor. He's not taking the time to go after his opponent. I noticed, by the way, with interest, that in Bill Hoppner's introduction tonight, he never talked about Bill Hoppner. He went after Mike Johanns. I find that the contrast between the two candidates. And with Mike Johanns, you're going to find out what he stands for and what he's going to do when he is elected. I'm not sure with his opponent, who spends a good portion of his time attacking Mike or tearing down his positions, whether the people feel comfortable with that, because I think they really want to know what a candidate stands for, not how he feels about the other candidate.
And I have to say that that's gamesmanship, because saying that Bill Hoppner was attacking Mike Johanns makes people think that it's a personal attack. It is not an attack on person. It is an attack on what he's saying, because it in fact is not accurate. And Mike Johanns does the political dodge. He evades the question. He never answers.
Well, I just want to go back to you, Chuck, and Bernie, just chime in if you can get
Bernie,
into
it's
it.
nice you're here. Thanks so much
If
for
you can
coming.
get into it, go ahead. But the issue of 413, and Bill Hoppner calls it waffling. Mike Johanns said, I came to a realization as I looked at the budget, and is that credible to people to say that he came to a position, he changed his mind because he it was early on in the thing? Do you think
It's absolutely credible. If a politician or a person seeking public office or a person in public office isn't allowed to have a change of position, then we get dogmatic principles, and we get people doing things that they shouldn't be doing just because they're afraid of the wrath they're going to get from either opponents or the press. Mike looked at the issue, he made a decision, and that was, I can't support this, I'm going to change my position, I'm going to tell the people of Nebraska that I'm doing it. He had nothing really to gain by doing it, other than being honest and having a clear conscience. He could have pretended to support that all the way through, been elected, and then changed his mind. Who would have known? But the fact is, I think it's refreshing to have a person seeking public office that has the courage to say, I was wrong on that, I'm changing my mind, and I think the people out there will understand, will accept that.
You think that's how it's playing on Main Street, Bernie?
Well, I don't think it's a credibility issue, because I agree that if someone changed their mind and they're upfront and honest about it, I don't think that's going to have an impact on the voters. I think the more important thing is how each of the candidates have been playing this particular theme. And I noticed in previous debates, as well as in their television commercials and what we heard tonight, is that clearly Mr. Hoppner is stressing and hammering this issue much more strongly than Mr. Johans. They're both on record as opposed, but if you look at the amount of attention that each are giving, clearly Mr. Hoppner is giving more attention, and that clearly seems to be one of the important themes that he is pushing. This is not, apparently from what we heard tonight anyway in the past debates, a high priority or the top priority issue for Mr. Johans, but it certainly seems to be for Mr. Hoppner. So then the question is, how is 413 playing out among the voters? And that, I think, remains yet to be seen. If it plays extremely negatively in the voters, then I think Mr. Hoppner is going to benefit from it, because he, again, is talking about that in a much more stronger way. If it doesn't resonate with the voters, then that theme isn't going to help him in the final analysis.
And if I could only finish, after traveling 130,000 miles across this state, bragging about it, and after being the mayor of the city of Lincoln for 8 years and preparing those budgets for all those years, why did it take the last year of his administration to finally figure it out and to know that, with all his experience that he brags about, to know how damaging 413 is to the state? I think, in the primary, his two opponents were both supporting 413, and it was a political ploy, and he discovered afterwards how adamant people were, especially in the western part of the state. But when he had state senators coming in to him and say, if you don't move off this, we cannot be there for you. That's why he changed his mind, and it's clear as that.
Okay, we're going to kind of hone in on what you've mentioned, Bernie. You talked about how whether it resonates. We're dealing with a situation here where Mike Johans is a little more known commodity, even though Bill Hoppner ran ran against a Republican. Well, he ran against a Democrat and lost by a teeny-weeny amount. But he would have been in the same place maybe 8 years ago. But we forget who he was, because he was an administrator in the governor's office. So his job is to, in the marketing trade, they call it product differentiation. There are so many things that you brought up that they're, at least if you went down a checklist, okay, against 413, against 414, against this, against that, for this, for that, that it's real hard for Mr. Hoppner to differentiate himself. So he tried to do that. He waffled, I didn't, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is he going to be able to do that, Ann? Is he going to really, they both seem to be nice people with decent characters. I mean, that's the key right now. He better do that.
Well, it is, and admittedly, and as a Democrat in this state of Nebraska with a Republican plurality, when it is a race where there is no incumbent, over the last 40 years, we have seen that the Republican has won. But what we've also seen over the last 40 years, that after that Republican, it was Norbert Tiemann, Kay Orr, and Charlie Thone, that after they had one term, that they would turn around beaten by a Democrat. So this is an opportunity for Nebraskans to do it right the first time.
I just find this fascinating that Ann has just conceded the election to Mike Johans. So thank you, Ann. We appreciate that. But I'm going to tell you, Mike has the philosophy of smaller government, less taxes. Those were words came out of him tonight. Those were words that he picked up traveling across the state of Nebraska, visiting all 93 counties, many more than once, and talking to people all across Nebraska. That was a theme that resonated across America in 1994 when the Republicans gained control of Congress for the first time in 40 years. That's the same theme that Chuck Hagel used in 1996 to be elected to the United States Senate, and that is truly what people want: smaller government, less taxes. Mike Johans has a commitment to do that. He's done it. He's done it in Lincoln. As he said, this is about leadership, and he's done it, and he sure has, and he's done it well.
I have never heard a candidate run for office and say more government, more taxes. The Republicans just use those little sound bites, but I don't think anybody's ever.
We heard that, Bernie. How many elections, and then that really resonated with the voters. They really got it in their mind a few years back. Democrats, at least in their mind, do mean more spending. And you may say, Chuck, that they did do it. But the point is that going to play now? We've got so many Democrats moving towards the center or being more pragmatic in their approach. Governor Nelson, for one example. Bob Kerry's very liberal on some things, but he's pragmatic on others. I mean, I think the poll shows that they think he's okay. So is that going to work? Because Mr. Johanns is for less spending, less government. That automatically now means
Well, I think the days of big new social programs are over, and people are looking to the Republicans to make sure they don't come back. So when you have a candidate who says smaller government, less taxes, they have a tendency to believe them. When a Democrat says smaller government, less taxes, hang on to your wallet.
So you're saying, and Bernie, is he saying it's an insurance policy then if you elect a Republican? Is that the way it is now? I don't know.
Well, campaigns can sometimes be a lot of 30-second sound bites, and we see that candidates on both sides, of course, take advantage of that. I'm not sure that there's some consistency in how the voters may respond to that. Sometimes they buy into that, sometimes they don't. I think that the issues, at least in general terms, some of the issues are going to have an impact on voter turnout. I just wanted to briefly come back to your original question about what Hoppner had to do and so forth. I think your question has a double-edged sword. Despite the wonderful efforts that Chuck has done to unify his party, we know that there are some factions within the party that were not tremendously happy when Mr. Johanns won the nomination.
But they are now, Bernie.
And, well, we'll see on November 3rd.
Yes,
That's
we will.
the critical question. Will, again, the more conservative elements within the party, because you were saying that both seem to be coming to the middle, look very similar on issues, is this going to create some internal problems for at least some of the constituency? I don't think it
But they're
creates...
not going to vote for Bill Hoppner.
No, but if you stay
Although
home...
you'd
and
welcome
don't-
that, Ann.
Yes. Because what Bill Hoppner has to do, of course, there's an advantage for registration for Republicans in the state. So if some Republicans stay at home and don't do anything, that cuts into the potential margin. And then, of course, coupled with that, how well the Democrats will be in getting out their voters. And that's a good question because up to now it's been pretty low key for an election year. And generally we would say that the lower the key, the fewer Democratic than traditional than Republican voters. So I think there's a lot of factors that are still out there that will play out the next month or so that would have an impact. So I wouldn't say the election is over yet.
Let me just affirm that from our travels across the state, and Mike just took a tour across the state with John Breslow and met most of John Breslow's supporters going around the state, and to a person, they're comfortable and they're voting for Mike. I will just tell you, in the primary, when you have a contested primary, feelings are hurt after the election is over because everyone wanted their person to win. But Republicans figured it out a few years ago. When we split and walk away from our candidates, we lose. And we got tired of losing in Nebraska. So we're not doing that anymore. And I'm just telling you, the Republican Party is unified across the state, and I'm very confident that Mike Johanns will win a great portion of the Republican vote. And by the way, he's going to take a major portion of the Democrat vote too.
In your dreams. I go back. You just said that Mike Johanns went on an all-day tour yesterday. He continues to say that when he's been campaigning, that he campaigns on nights, on weekends. All of these are things that are meant to distract voters and to say things that just aren't, in fact, true. How did he travel all day yesterday and not be in Lincoln and doing the job he claims to do as mayor of Lincoln? The whole campaign's been fraught with statements like that. And as far as a united Republican Party, I'm sorry, Chuck, but I still continue to hear repercussions from your convention last June when Congressman Beerider went in and ripped at the people who are the pro-life candidates or pro-life people and said that we no longer will be a candidate of a one issue, and created real turmoil, and I still hear from them.
Well, maybe you do. I'm just going to tell you that when you wake up on November 4th, Mike Johanns is going to be governor, and he's going to be governor by a good margin.
Bernie, you mentioned that it's not over for Bill Hoppner. I certainly wouldn't say it's over. Although I'm not privy to his research on his trending, and there's always margins of errors in polls. But let's look ahead we have virtually a month and a couple of days left from the time that we're airing this. We'll start with you, Ann. We'll go down the line. What has to happen for your candidate to win? And Bernie, you could go both ways on that. But what has to happen for Bill Hoppner between now and then to win? What has to happen to Mike to absolutely assure it?
Well, again, I think you addressed it earlier when Mike Johanns was in a very hotly contested primary, and so he had the benefit of media focus. I remember clearly that the Democratic candidates, there were 2 of them, that there was virtually no coverage. Not even, I called one radio station on election night. They led with who won the Republican primary, and then they went off onto other races. I finally called him. I said, could you tell us who won the Democratic primary? So clearly he's been a beneficiary of that. Bill Hoppner has to continue with his message. He also has to get on TV and through other media sources and let people know who he is. And from that perspective, he's had a disadvantage. But I'm sure that after they see the leadership skills, the character, somebody who has been forthright, somebody who stands up when it isn't popular and takes the risk of saying what people don't quite understand and takes the time to try to explain it. The best example of that is the Lid when he came out way last February, March, and opposed it and took that big risk. And if that's the kind of person that people want for their leader, someone who, and it's the tough issue that it's hard to understand. Even tonight, the 414 initiative, which we're all calling the telephone initiative, he had a clear understanding of what that is, and I could tell from the response, especially since I'm on the Nebraska Public Service Commission. He clearly understands what that's about and where that should be taken.
So he needs more face time,
Yes.
and he needs to keep, you're saying that he needs to just keep hammering on the same 2-3 things that he has been hammering on, and that's going to do it.
I would believe so.
All right. Bernie, what do you think needs to be done? Either way.
Well, maybe we could ask Chuck the question, what does Hoppner need to do to win? I think we might have some interesting information if we got an answer to that, but I won't.
Good point.
I won't pose that particular question.
You're my fill-in if I'm sick on the show, okay?
Okay. Well, the Republicans have an advantage in registration and usually turnout, and historically, of course, the Democrats have to cut into that margin of some of the weaker Republican partisans and the independent vote. And of course, Democrats in the past have been able to do that, coupled sometimes with the fact that the Republicans didn't have their act together, so that all worked nicely.
That was before Chuck came on.
Well, yeah, obviously before that. But there are some things that probably have to happen, and that is that the themes that Hoppner's emphasized tonight, I think, need to resonate. I see a lot of those themes seeking to cut into the Republican margin in the greater Nebraska. The 413 issue, which I understand, but the cattlemen's opposed to it and other groups, seems to be taking some hold in the greater Nebraska area. Emphasis on agricultural issues. I noticed today that there were press releases from both Hoppner and Johans on the agriculture issue. And again, Hoppner tried to distinguish himself from Johans on that particular issue. So I think this is part of the strategy to cut in as much as possible to the vote. He also obviously needs to solidify a good show in Douglas County. Lincoln, trouble with being a mayor for 8 years is that you make a lot of friends, you also make some enemies. You can't be in a job for any period of time in which you don't get kind of a mix. So he's going to, it is his home base. We would expect him to do well, but I don't know, for example, the veto of the recent ordinance, what impact that's going to have on his base. And again, that may be just a limited number of people who may not impact it. But I think there are a lot of things out there, as I said, in the next month that need to play out. And I wouldn't bet the mortgage at this point on any race. Because remember, up until about a week before the primary, it was between Christensen and Breslow, and all of a sudden, like the dark horse running real fast at the finish line, Johans came across. So there are still some unknowns out there.
I think as long as Mike Johans continues to go out, visit with the people, emphasize smaller government, less taxes, and we don't get complacent as Republicans and take anything for granted, I think we'll have a very fine November 3rd. I can assure you that the Nebraska Republican Party is solidly unified. As I said, we learned that when we split, we lose. And since we much more enjoyed winning in the last several years, we're going to enjoy winning again on November 3rd. Certainly, we've had some interesting times, and we've, like brothers and sisters, we occasionally have a little spat among ourselves, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to vote for our candidate, and that doesn't mean we're not unified with basic ideas, and that is less government, smaller taxes. That's what Mike Johans stands for, and also he'll continue to remind people that this is about leadership and this is about governing, and he's done both as mayor of Lincoln, and he's done them both very well.
Let me ask you this, since you are talking to people that we hope will vote, the people that are watching this, do you think that people are going to turn out to vote? We have, we have some real turnoff from what's happened in Washington. Whether you're for a bill or you're against him or wherever you are in the middle, people are very kind of tired of politics right now. Is that going to have any effect one way or the other on your parties or just people in general's trip to the polls?
Well, I don't even know that you can lay that at what's happened in Washington. That's been a national
You can blame
trend.
the news media,
Yeah.
whatever, why
Well,
people are turned
It's
off.
been a trend that's been going on for quite some time, that there's less and less participation every election. And I fear for it, and frankly, I would like to take time to visit with Chuck when we get outside this election to see what we can do to once again engage people in the political process, because I really do believe that government affects your life from the time before you're born until after you die. And we need to, with the most powerful country in the world, to let a small number of people decide who is going to be the leader of our country and our state and other offices. It's very important to re-engage them.
With regard to this election, do you think it might be a wash, or do you think it's not a concern of yours as a party chief?
I'm not only for the Democrats, I just fear for the country at large. This is not just a local phenomenon. This is a national phenomenon that's been going on for quite some time. So we need to concern ourselves about what we can do to remind people that how important government is to them from every level, from the local level all the way up to the top.
I'm sure you'd both agree with that, but anything on the specific race, Bernie?
Well, I would say that primaries in various states that were held just within the last few weeks, Washington, Massachusetts, some other states, did not indicate a lower than normal voter turnout. So the pundits seem to be saying that what's happening in Washington is not filtering down to impact at least voter turnout and how voters are responding to local candidates, which comes back to the old Tip O'Neill saying that all politics is local, and I think to a certain extent that's probably true. So I think voter turnout here is going to depend upon how much media attention is focused on the campaign, the differences. Again, the two gentlemen have carried out, I think, if compared to some other races we may have seen in the past, they've been fairly civil, except I would say extremely civil campaign, focusing mostly on the issues. That's not going to grab a lot of headlines, and so that if there is a lower voter turnout, I think it's those kinds of issues that will affect it rather than what's happened in Washington.
I think in this particular election cycle, people are going to be scrutinizing, those that do come out and vote are going to be scrutinizing the candidates very, very carefully. I think that many people are turned off, disgusted, whatever, with some of the things that have been going on with our elected officials, especially starting with the President of the United States. And so consequently, I think they're going to be looking very, very carefully, and I think when they take a good look at our candidate, Mike Johanns, they'll find a man of first-class character and an outstanding leader, and I think they're going to be very comfortable with him.
But your
I think they are
Republicans
going to
are
watch
still going to
very,
be
very
there. They're going to be there no matter what, right?
They are coming. I'm telling you, they're coming.
Well, we are going to see in about a month. There is one more debate between the candidates. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the folks here at UNO who've put 2 live shows on back to back. Join us next week for Consider This.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health,